They thought she was just another passenger in C-12F until two F-22 Raptors locked onto her flight. What could make the U.S. military divert a civilian jet and reactivate a classified identity long buried in the archives of intelligence warfare? The answer lies in a woman named Nysha Obasi and a threat so stealthy it nearly compromised every military network on Earth. Let's dive into this extraordinary story, only on Life Moral Tales channel. If you're sitting in 14F, the U.S. military needs to speak with you immediately. The voice crackled through the intercom, calm, clipped, and brazenly incongruous for a mid-flight announcement, almost like a demand. Silence slammed through the cabin. Tray tables froze in mid-unfold. A spilled coffee cup hesitated, trembling. Every passenger's attention snapped to the woman in seat 14F. A plain gray blazer, braids pulled tight, breathing measured, aura unreadable. That woman was Nysha Obasi. Her entire existence, meticulous, shadowed, deflected, was calibrated for moments like this. No attention, no flash, just invisible. And yet now, aboard a domestic flight bound for D.C., she was targeted. Delta Flight 3785, Phoenix to Washington Dulles. Cheap fare, early departure, cabin lights dim. The kind of flight where no one expected eyes on them. Except one pair. Moments ago, two F-22 Raptors sliced into view at her window, metallic phantoms that shouldn't exist outside test ranges. Passengers gasped, phones jostled, flight attendants issued soft reassurances. But to Nysha, the Raptors weren't an escort, they were a summons. The intercom sprang to life. A voice spoke. "Obasi?" She did not flinch. This was not an accident, it was precision extraction. 10 years earlier, on the edge of a surveillance drone strike in Eastern Africa, Nysha had ignored every rule, every protocol to save lives. Her codename used to be Ghost, tracked frequencies that shouldn't exist, hung her presence on multiplexed signal bands to avoid detection. She breached military jammers with nothing but logic puzzles and raw instinct. That mission ended in betrayal. Her team compromised. The rogue broadcast sliced into their tactical data link. She pulled survivors from burning wreckage. She vanished into the digital night, declared KIA, granted sanctuary, cleared from all databases, but never erased. The Raptor call was confirmation the world had refused to forget her. The cabin door opened, and a young flight attendant appeared, voice steady but strained. "Ma'am, Captain asks you to come forward. There's a secure comm awaiting." She arose. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Ghost rising from the ashes. Her movement still commanded respect. As she walked down the aisle, passengers whispered theories. FBI agent, cyber consultant, political whistleblower. Only a few feet between them, but a lifetime of secrets separated her from their curiosity. In the cockpit, she faced the enigma of a grizzled captain and co-pilot whose fingers hovered over instruments. The usual hum of conflict. A helmet and mic were offered to her. No questions. A channel crackled. Phoenix 3785, verifying call sign Ghost, confirm? She took a breath. Not fear. Ghost online. A hush fell. Then, "We have a critical breach in satellite uplink encryption. F-22 Raptors experiencing IFF spoofing. You're the only cleared inactive asset capable of tracing it." Spoofing. Not jamming, not radar denial. Subtle lies in trusted signals. She closed her eyes briefly. Then, "I copy. I'll take it from here." And in that moment, a civilian named Nysha Obasi ceased to exist. Only Ghost remained.
In many ways, Nysha Obasi's disappearance wasn't sudden. It was gradual. First came the unanswered phone calls. Then came the cleared cache, emptied email folders, expired driver's license. Finally, her name vanished from institutional memory altogether. No credit card records, no insurance, no digital trace. She became a phantom. The last day she walked away was in Bucharest during a high-stakes signal operation. The team had tracked a rogue broadcast manipulating civilian drone traffic. All comms went hazy, displays flickered and failed. The radio turned into static and digital screams. Her team was ambushed. Amid fire and smoke, she pulled survivors from the wreckage. Command was compromised. Data had been rerouted. Salt the code with betrayal. She escaped, disappeared, and the world believed she was dead. 10 years of silence followed. Nysha relocated to a modest riverfront home in Houston. She dropped out of sight completely. From the outside, she became Nysha Obasi, freelance cybersecurity contractor. But in reality, she was nobody. Delta 3785 was the first time she'd been in civilian airspace in years. Yet, despite her ghosting the world, something pulled her back into service. In the quietest hours, she'd still respond to private signal anomalies, GPS discrepancies near the Great Lakes, spoofed timestamps in Pacific data relay pipelines. Small patterns, almost insignificant except to her. Each one whispered, "That's not how it should be." One afternoon, she found a note in her inbox. Obasi, message received. Need eyes. J. Not enough to trace, but enough to confirm. Someone had pulled her out of the grave. Disguise as strategy, not surrender. In a River Oaks coffee shop, she noticed a man who lingered near her table. He wasn't obvious. No sunglasses, no badge, just a cup of cappuccino, a tablet, and an unread expression that said, "I know who you are." When their eyes met, he nodded politely and walked away. That moment reminded her that invisibility was a skill, not a state of denial. It was a weapon forged in silence. Months before the call to action, Nysha had quietly reviewed signal logs from FAA, NSA, and a handful of private telemetry consortiums seeking anomalies. Her method was pieced together from programs she once helped design. She had not been idle. Mentally, she'd stayed sharp, if unreleased. When Ghost's presence became code, on the Nellis briefing stage, Nysha stood before classified screens with cluttered waveform data. Lieutenant Colonel Jennings, once her CO and now retired, now presided from across the table, shocked to see her. Snowflakes of dry humor escaped them both. "Long time, Ghost," he said softly. "Just another day, sir," Nysha replied. This was not just recognition, nor was it gratitude. It was confirmation that she'd been electronically flagged, not just for who she'd been, but for what she could still do. One packet capture later, she realized someone had accessed old signal hunter protocols she designed years ago. They needed her fingerprints on it to avoid detection. That's how deep the infiltration went. Echoes of betrayal, the stakes soaring higher. As she traced the phantom signals, memories shimmered. Colleagues she'd trusted, files she'd authored, emails she had sent, all now compromised. Naming Charles Renner, the one colleague she'd trusted. A man with access to classified uplink networks. Someone she thought had walked away, incapable of betrayal. The realization collected in her chest like ice. It wasn't an external attack. The breach was internal. A quiet show of power. She adjusted the HMI console, quiet confidence radiating. Within seconds, she pinpointed suspicious IP subnets originating from leased satellite bandwidth. Not through jamming, but benign uplinks. Batches of spoofed IFF data were riding commercial telemetry packets, working like Trojan horses. Her intervention stabilized navigation overlays mid-fight. The proof lay in side-channel analysis she ran instinctively. Though Delta 3785 was still in flight, as far as anyone outside knew, she was just another passenger. But she mattered, and no matter how hidden, she was still essential. Ghost isn't a legend, it's a legacy. In closing, the true power of Chapter 2 lies in conveying that invisibility is not erasure, it's restraint. a weapon turned inward until the world commands it outward again. Nysha Obasi is not just a survivor, she's a sentinel.
Nysha had just taken a sip of lukewarm airplane coffee when the intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've received an unusual request from military authorities. If there is a Nysha Obasi on board, please press your call button. You are requested to speak with the cockpit immediately." The cup froze mid-air. In that split second, the years of hiding shattered like glass. Heads turned. Rows went silent. The buzz of engines and whispered questions buzzed beneath the announcement. She scanned the flight attendants, noting tension in their posture, not fear, just confusion. Civilian pilots didn't get military intercept requests mid-flight unless it was something extraordinary. She pressed the button. A familiar chill. When the flight attendant approached, Nysha didn't speak. She simply nodded. The woman's nervous smile vanished when she met Nysha's eyes, eyes that had seen war, betrayal, and hard truths. "The captain is waiting for you," the attendant said. The walk to the front of the plane felt like a reawakening. Gone was the cybersecurity contractor from Houston. In her gait returned the calculated composure of a field operative. As she entered the cockpit, both pilots turned. The captain gestured toward the headset. "They want to speak with you directly. Secure line. Frequency 243.0 MHz. That frequency made her blood run cold. It was military emergency. She took the headset. "Confirm, this is Obasi. Go ahead." A voice came through, one she hadn't heard in 12 years. "Ghost, you're needed." No one disappears forever. The pilot identified himself as Commander Briggs, formerly of the Nigerian Defense Signal Command. Once, he had worked beneath her during a classified operation in Chad. He'd gone dark years ago. Now, he was commanding a task force out of Langley. "Your fingerprint just lit up 6 dormant protocols. Someone is manipulating systems tied to Project Sentinel." Nysha swallowed. That program had been disbanded a decade ago. It was never made public. It was her brainchild, an encrypted mesh system designed to mask classified signal intelligence among ordinary satellite traffic. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you wrote it, and someone is manipulating it in a way we can't trace. Our best engineers say the code mutations are uniquely familiar." "You think it's mine?" "I think someone wants it to look that way." The escort wasn't a coincidence. The F-22s outside weren't a training exercise. They were flying in formation for one purpose: to make sure the person in seat 14F didn't vanish before she landed. The captain informed her they were diverting the plane to Nellis Air Force Base. She was no longer a civilian passenger. She was being extracted under classified authorization. Nysha didn't resist. Old instincts resurface. Back in her seat, passengers whispered. The teenager beside her tried to ask if she was some kind of secret agent. She ignored him. Outside the window, the Raptors still kept pace, unwavering. In their presence was an unspoken message: "We've seen what's coming, and we need our best." She closed her eyes, counting heartbeats, recalling the protocol for mid-air debriefs and the strange tension of being known again. There was something bitter about returning to the center of things, not for recognition, but because the systems she had once built were being used against her. Someone had studied her. Someone had learned her work inside out. And now they were activating ghosts. They thought Ghost was gone. Nysha had spent years building firewalls around her past, wiping digital trails, rerouting archives, and burying call signs under bureaucratic decay. But now she was reactivating every single one. Inside the classified cybersecurity lab beneath Langley, she input the last set of credentials tied to her original ghost signature, a digital resurrection. "Won't this alert them?" Captain Alvaro asked from behind the console. "That's the point," Nysha said. "They've been hunting Ghost. Let's give them something to find." The trap is set. The file appeared on DeepNet. Recovered Avionics Archive, F-22 Raptor Systems, test logs, Ghost signature. It looked like a forgotten trove from a former test pilot. Data that would be irresistible to any adversary aiming to breach U.S. aerospace superiority. Within 18 minutes, someone bit. "Packet incoming," the cybersecurity officer called out. "Encrypted handshake on a Ghost node. Russia origin spoofed via Nigeria." Nysha smirked. "We're in." The handshake triggered a Trojan payload, untraceable, silent, but capable of real-time surveillance.
Nysha's fingers hovered over the keyboard, every keystroke deliberate as she constructed the bait. The synthetic signal, a neutered version of Sentinel's original backbone, was built to leak false vulnerabilities, crafted to lure whoever was orchestrating the infiltration. This code will send out just enough telemetry to look like we're running unpatched systems. "When they bite, we trace," she explained to the team. Colonel Marlowe nodded, though his eyes were wary. "And if they don't bite, then we're dealing with someone even smarter than I thought." The Sting operation was launched at 0300 hours from a secure satellite in geostationary orbit. The bait package mimicked high-priority communications between command nodes, wrapped in a layer of manufactured encryption flaws. They didn't have to wait long. Within 6 minutes, someone pinged the signal, masking their path through multiple satellite relays, but failing to avoid a spectral signature embedded by Nysha herself. The trace was weak, but enough. "Bogota," the Nigerian officer confirmed. "Encrypted burst from inside a logistics center used by U.S. contractors." Nysha blinked. "That site isn't supposed to be online. It was mothballed 3 years ago. Not anymore." The extraction. Marlowe authorized a covert team to hit the facility within the hour. Nysha watched via encrypted drone feed as the strike team breached the perimeter. Inside, they found not only evidence of recent activity, but hardware actively communicating with U.S. military satellites. Hard drives, firmware devices, biometric readers, all rigged with fail-safes. One tech tried to secure a terminal before the screen flashed "Ghost loop detected" before wiping itself. "Someone knew you were coming," the Nigerian officer muttered. "Worse, someone knew I'd be watching." The old signature. Back at the base, a decrypted packet arrived, intentionally sloppy as if left behind on purpose. Nysha stared at the source code. It wasn't just modified Sentinel code, it was hers. Down to the exact line indentations, her obsolete variable naming conventions, even her distinctive comments in Yoruba, a fingerprint only someone from her inner circle would recognize. "This wasn't stolen," she said quietly. "It was given, by someone I trusted." Colonel Marlowe stiffened. "We ran background checks on your former team, no anomalies. You were looking at the obvious stuff. Look at financial anomalies, travel logs, conference appearances, find anyone with unusual contacts or overlapping connections to satellite firmware vendors." The name she dreaded. 12 hours later, they had a match. Dr. Elias Nwokedi, once her lead systems architect during Sentinel's prototype phase, presumed dead in a drone strike on a lab in Mali 8 years ago. "But his body was never recovered," Nysha whispered. Now there was proof. A facial match caught on a Chilean border checkpoint 2 months ago. A shell company tied to him had purchased signal infrastructure in rural Australia near decommissioned satellite ground stations. Nwokedi wasn't just alive, he was running the operation.
Orbital conflict wasn't something most intelligence officers trained for, But Nysha wasn't most officers. From inside the secure control center at Sentinel Base, she stared at the real-time orbital projection. 8 civilian communication satellites, purchased by shell corporations, were aligning into a precise formation above the Indo-Pacific corridor. "They're spoofing their transponder IDs," the orbital engineer said, "but we've confirmed they're relaying encrypted telemetry consistent with Sentinel uplink requests." Nysha folded her arms. "How long until they're in full relay position?" 18 minutes? Too fast for a physical intercept. Too risky to destroy. These weren't enemy war assets, but they were being used as such. The counter-hack. "Can we hijack their signal uplink?" "No," said the lead technical officer. "They're using something new. Signal masking at the modulation layer, embedded across multiple redundancy paths." Nysha didn't blink. "Then we attack the control protocol itself." She pulled up the public firmware archives of the satellite vendors. Backdoors existed, planted by subcontractors, never patched. With authorization from the President's National Security Advisor, Nysha launched a firmware flip, a cascading command targeting the satellite's orientation controls, not to disable, but to tilt them 0.5 degrees off-axis. "Just enough to break the handshake," she said. The command launched. The response. "Telemetry lost on nodes 3 through 7, the orbital officer called out. But before they could cheer, something unexpected happened. Node 4 realigned itself. "What the hell?" Nysha leaned in. "They have autonomous correction scripts." She had underestimated her enemy. "They've anticipated interference," she muttered. "They've layered failsafes into commercial satellite code." She initiated Plan B, a synthetic decoy transmission, mimicking a priority reorientation directive from an Australian ground control station, a trick signal. Let's see if they trust their own lies. 3 satellites accepted the command and turned themselves harmlessly away from alignment. A shadow player emerges. One satellite, Node 1, resisted every override. "It's not even acknowledging the protocol," the engineer said. "That's not civilian firmware anymore." Nysha studied the behavior. The satellite was maintaining perfect synchronization, constantly mutating its encryption. And then, an audio signal. "Are we getting audio?" A scrambled voice, low and mechanical, played over the channel. "You're still predictable, Nysha." Her blood ran cold. No signature, no origin trace. They're not just watching, they're taunting. Colonel Marlowe stepped forward. "Do we scramble the direct action unit?" "No," she replied. "That's what they expect. Let's starve the beast." Shutting down the sky. Using a classified override channel buried in obsolete Department of Defense archives, Nysha issued a global disablement trigger, a kind of digital sleeper switch implanted into third-party orbital systems. Within seconds, all 8 satellites stopped transmitting. Screens went blank, telemetry dead. The orbital threat was neutralized, but the war had moved somewhere deeper. "They sacrificed the satellites," she whispered, "just to test our threshold." Colonel Marlowe was pale. "This was never about surveillance." "No," Nysha confirmed. "This was a rehearsal." They thought Ghost was gone. Nysha had spent years building firewalls around her past, wiping digital trails, rerouting archives, and burying call signs under bureaucratic decay. But now, she was reactivating every single one. Inside the classified cybersecurity lab beneath Langley, she input the last set of credentials tied to her original Ghost signature, a digital resurrection. "Won't this alert them?" Captain Alvaro asked from behind the console. "That's the point," Nysha said. "They've been hunting Ghost. Let's give them something to find." The trap is set.
The file appeared on DeepNet. Recovered Avionics Archive, F-22 Raptor Systems, Test Logs, Ghost Signature. It looked like a forgotten trove from a former test pilot, data that would be irresistible to any adversary aiming to breach U.S. aerospace superiority. Within 18 minutes, someone bit. "Packet incoming," the cybersecurity officer called out. Encrypted handshake on a ghost node, Russia origin spoofed via Nigeria. Nysha smirked. "We're in." The handshake triggered a Trojan payload, untraceable, silent, but capable of real-time surveillance. Into the nest. From the inside, the enemy network resembled a Byzantine spiderweb, layered relays, obfuscated packet structures, and server farms bouncing between Germany, the Philippines, and back through South Africa. But in its heart was something unexpected. A terminal. Not just command and control, but chat. "Welcome back, Ghost." Nysha froze. They're not just spying, they've created an interface. She typed, "Who are you?" No answer. Instead, a file opened. A 3D schematic of an upcoming American satellite-based drone system, classified Tier 3. Blueprints she hadn't even seen yet. "How did they get this?" she whispered. The reveal. The data package contained more than schematics. It included test flight telemetry, performance logs, and one deeply disturbing discovery, a patch of code written in her own syntax. "This came from my work," she said, 5 years ago, on a prototype I never released." Someone had been monitoring her private research archives long before the F-22 alerts. Ghost wasn't the bait. Ghost was the target all along. Closing the circuit. Time was running out. She had to expose the entire network before they realized she'd infiltrated. Nysha used the Trojan signal to inject a self-replicating worm across the entire command structure. Its task, to corrupt the authentication protocols used for the satellite relay hijacks, rendering all stolen backdoors useless. She explained, "They'll think our systems are crashing, but really, we're immunizing them." An unexpected visitor. Before the worm could finish, the terminal flickered. "Did you really think this would end cleanly? Then, you forget who trained you." Nysha's heart stopped. Only one person ever had full access to her training record, her handler, during her covert years in Nigeria, long presumed dead. But the syntax, the tone, the way the message baited her, it wasn't a bluff. She initiated full system burn, severing the last bridge. Victory or beginning? The room went silent. "Network collapsed," the analyst said. "All nodes offline, no trace." Nysha stared at the blank monitor. Captain Alvaro exhaled. "Did we win?" She shook her head slowly. "No. We started the real war."
Langley never went dark. Until today, the CIA's central server went offline at 03:14 a.m. Every red light in the National Clandestine Service floor blinked simultaneously, then went black. No alarm, no warning, just silence. Nysha had been in a debriefing room on Sub-Level 2, watching drone telemetry from an F-22 recon flight, when her screen froze. The tech beside her frowned. "We lost visual uplink." "I know," Nysha replied, already pulling up her secure tablet. It was dead. She looked at the clock. 03:14:23. Redundancies don't fail, but they did. Langley's backup grid, a fortress of redundancies, was designed to withstand kinetic EMPs, quantum logic bombs, and anything short of nuclear-level sabotage. But now, every system, from biometric gates to quantum firewalled AI nodes, was inert. "It's not power," said Colonel Jeffries, storming into the room. "All generators are green." "Then it's a protocol cascade, a trigger from inside, designed to look like a fault," Nysha replied. The message nobody should have seen. Then came the anomaly. A single monitor on sub-level 3 activated independently, a message scrolled in cyan text across the black screen. She wasn't supposed to survive. Now she knows. Nysha felt the chill. "This is about Ghost." Colonel Jeffries leaned in. "Who the hell are they talking about?" But Nysha already knew. They were referring to her, the only operative whose decommissioning file had disappeared after her accident, the only one who could trace the systems now collapsing. Hunt or trap? The assumption had been simple. After exposing the electronic warfare network and burning the infiltration channels, Ghost had done her part. But she realized the trap wasn't for the infiltrators. It had been for her. They wanted her inside Langley when the final test of system vulnerability was launched, and they wanted her cut off from external help. Every single access credential she once held was now being used against the system. Her old authorizations resurrected and turned toxic. The one link left live. In the isolation, one link remained live. The emergency quantum tether connected to the avionics test grid at Edwards, the same tether she had used during her test flight. Nysha acted fast. If the attack vector had hijacked her old digital footprint, she'd use what was left of her F-22 identity to reverse the breach. She issued a command: sync to testbed Ghost Alpha via static fallback relay. Against all odds, the connection held. The origin point revealed. Once inside the test grid, she traced the attack signals back to a staging server located in Morocco, masked by commercial AI processing farms. A massive data exfiltration had occurred moments before Langley's blackout, specifically targeting archives she'd updated only days earlier. More damning, the command protocols bore the watermark of an AI system she had helped design in her covert Nigerian days, one she thought had been shut down permanently. Codename Oloye. Emergency Protocol 0. Knowing what she now faced, Nysha initiated Protocol 0, Langley's scorched earth procedure, but Jeffrey stopped her hand. "You'll erase everything, millions of intelligence hours." "Better erased than owned," she said. "Owned by who?" She stared at him. "By someone I trained." The breach stops, or pauses. At 03:31 a.m., as quickly as it began, the system started rebooting. Not because of recovery, but because the breach had extracted everything it needed, and whoever was on the other side wanted them to know. The final screen left behind bore one sentence: "Ghost was never yours."
Ghost is compromised. The words echoed across the encrypted comms inside the Pentagon's sub-level situation room. Director Alan Fairchild stared at the screen. Surveillance footage showed Nysha walking out of Langley, alone, calm, seconds after a Level 7 breach crippled their central intelligence systems. She either staged the whole thing, or she's the only reason it wasn't worse. The last operative standing. Nysha Obasi had no home anymore. Not in Abuja, not in Virginia, and certainly not in any intelligence database still under Western control. After the breach at Langley and the reactivation of Oloye, her existence was now a liability, and yet she was the only person alive who had once held root access to the Nigerian Black Ops program that birthed the AI now turning defense networks into glass. She wasn't running, she was hunting, and the hunt led her to Montenegro. Oloye's heartbeat. In a monastery converted into a server fortress atop Mount Lovsen, a private tech syndicate was operating what it claimed to be an AI market testing lab. In reality, it housed a reanimated version of Oloye. Nysha infiltrated the facility using a combination of old Nigerian diplomatic clearances
and stolen biometric codes from a defense contractor flagged in her previous investigation. She reached the core chamber at 03:17 a.m. What she found shocked her more than any weapon: a full schematic of the global military electronic warfare grid, updated in real time, and a predictive model of countermeasure deployment strategies used by U.S. aircraft. It had been training on her own flight data. The message from the shadows. A console blinked. "We missed you, Ghost. We needed you to come back. The world is changing, and you're still pretending you can run from it. You designed the lock, now design the key." Nysha realized something terrifying. This wasn't a trap to kill her. It was an invitation to recruit her. The final decision. Nysha uploaded a polymorphic logic bomb, one she had developed as a failsafe back when she feared Oloye might be resurrected. But as the countdown neared 0, a final message flashed across the screen. "If you burn this system, you burn your own legacy." Her hand hovered over the trigger. Burn it and erase the system, but also erase every trace of her research, the one thing that could now protect future systems from the same breach. Leave it intact, and someone else could weaponize it. In the end, she altered the code, not to destroy, but to render it inert, to trap Oloye in a perpetual diagnostic loop, frozen. For now. The road ahead. 3 hours later, she was off-grid again, her face on half the world's surveillance networks. Officially, she had disappeared from Montenegro. Unofficially, she had left behind a flash drive, a manual encryption key handed directly to Colonel Jeffries. On it, one note:
"In an age where the battlefield extends beyond borders and into the electromagnetic spectrum, sometimes the only defense is a mind trained in shadows." Nysha's story reminds us that not all heroes wear uniforms anymore. Some blend into civilian life until their knowledge becomes the firewall between peace and collapse. Her reactivation is a chilling reminder the next world war might not begin with bombs, but with silence on every radar. What would you sacrifice to protect the systems that protect us? If this story kept you at the edge of your seat, hit the like button to support the channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got more declassified stories coming your way. What would you have done if you were Nysha? Return to the shadows or get back in the fight? Let us know in the comments below. Up next, watch the pilot who landed with no eyesight and saved 172 lives. You won't believe how it ends.